Good afternoon and a very warm welcome indeed to today's iOB business webinar. It's a pleasure to have you on here. My name is Ben. I'm going to be your host for today. Okay, so just for a couple of minutes, whilst everybody's joining us on today's session, for those of you that are already here, a very warm welcome and a very big thank you for taking the time to join us on today's session. So just before we get kicked off, if I can run through a few know-hows as we're going through this webinar so that you get the most value from it. So we're going to do a brief introduction with myself. Once again, my name is Ben and I'm the resident business coach here at iOB Business. I'll be the one presenting you with this webinar today. Okay, now throughout today's webinar, we're going to cover three topics as we always do. And in between each of the three topics, you're going to have ample opportunity to take down any notes and indeed fire away with any questions. We always get a couple, so you're more than welcome to ask them. We're going to cover those in a Q&A session at the end of today's session. Okay, now if you would like to ask a question, there is a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen there that will be accessible to you all the way throughout today's session. So if you do need to fire away with any questions, please go ahead, ask. Don't worry about interrupting me. You won't. I won't even see it until the end. Well, I get a notification, but I won't see what the question is until the end of the session. Okay, so we're going to take a pause in between each of the three topics today to allow you the chance to do that. Okay, so welcome to those of you that are joining us now. We're getting a few people in now. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pop the presentation up on screen there. So you should now be able to see the presentation up on the screen, but I'm going to go ahead and switch off my video camera. So you shouldn't be able to see me anymore, but you should be able to see the presentation up on screen, and you should be able to hear my voice still. So if you could just do me a big favor right before we get kicked off, just let me know in the chat box if you can hear my voice okay, and if you can hear, if you can see the presentation on screen okay, and that'll give me the green light to go ahead with today's session, and we can all get rolling for some awesome content. Okay, so today's topic of conversation, 3 mega mistakes in business. Okay, now just as importantly as what these 3 mega mistakes are, we're going to talk to you about how you can avoid them as well. Okay, so in theory, each of the 3 mistakes today, what we're going to do is we're going to say essentially, what is it? Okay, we're going to cover what it is. Next up, we're going to discuss why it's a mistake. And finally, we're going to talk about how you can avoid it. Okay, so each of these, we're going to problem solve as we go along today through each of the 3 topics. All right, so we've got a confirmation, we're good to go. Everybody can hear me, everybody can see the screen. Awesome. If that changes, let me know in the chat some point throughout the webinar. It's not a problem, and we can see if we can get you sorted and get you fixed up again, ready to go. Okay, so right before we get kicked off, my name is Ben. I'll be your presenter today. I'm a business coach. I specialize in working with small businesses, just like many of you that are on here today, to help them achieve stability and growth. Okay, my ethos is all about safety, stability. How can we build something that can provide for us? All right, so today's session, we're going to talk about 3 things. Number 1, leaving it until tomorrow. Okay, I put this in a very, very obvious manner because it's something that we absolutely do as individuals and as humans. Okay, number 2, closing the door on education. And number 3, needless posturing. Okay, now needless posturing was a personal influence of mine to put in here because it's something that I see and something I would actually like to point out, so we can go through today's webinar and hopefully help you understand what that means. You can check if you're doing it, or if you don't do it, you can help yourself avoid doing it. Okay, so moving on with topic number 1 on today's session, we're going to run for about 15-20 minutes or so on this presentation. Then we're going to dive into a Q&A at the end. Okay, just to give you an idea of the time frame. So number 1, leaving it until tomorrow. Okay, so this phrase, okay, if I'm telling you what is the 3 of these mega mistakes in business, okay, now leaving it until tomorrow, it's really an analogy for essentially procrastination. Okay, it's something that we've got to be so careful of doing. Okay, now let me talk to you about this for a minute. What is it? What is leaving it until tomorrow? It's a familiar feeling of procrastination. Okay, it's a feeling that many of us hold. And in theory, what it is we're telling ourselves, oh no, it's not really a good day to do it today. Okay, I'm tired. I'm not feeling up to it. I haven't got the time. I'd be better doing it tomorrow. Okay, now you'll have heard the phrase, and we're going to cover this in more depth. Tomorrow turns into next week. Next week turns into next month. Next month turns into next year, if it's even still on your agenda. Okay, now a good side tip here, if you really must leave it until tomorrow, make sure that you've got it written down somewhere you're going to see it. Okay, because I myself, I'm even guilty of doing this. I take down notes and then I don't know where I put them. Okay, now all of us are guilty of these types of things, and we've got to be aware of these. So if you're going to take a note, Okay, like many of us do at conferences, lectures, webinars, make sure that you put it somewhere that you're going to be able to absorb that information. Okay, so some people that I speak with, they're great at absorbing information just straight from my voice or straight from the screen. Okay, that goes in, it doesn't go back out again. However, many of us, including myself, we need to take down notes to retain some of the important information. Okay, now these notes, they cannot just be written down and then essentially ignored. Okay, so if you insist on moving it until tomorrow or next week or whenever, okay, I'm going to tell you why it's bad in just a second, but if you must do this for a valid reason, make sure that whatever it is you were going to do today gets written down and it still gets done. Okay, there's so much that goes through the year undone because we say, oh no, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it next week, and then we completely forget it even existed. And then you're sitting on the couch one day and you go, oh no, that's not been done. Okay, so something we've got to write down, something we've got to make sure that we go back to. Okay, so what else is it? It's an idea that will be better suited to do the task in the future. Okay, now the information here can go two ways. Okay, one version of yourself could say, yeah, for sure, I'll have a good sleep tonight, I'll wake up tomorrow, I'll smash it. Okay, the question I want you to ask yourself, if we look at the other version of yourself, is why is today not a suitable day to do it? Why was yesterday not a suitable day? Because if you're saying you're going to leave it till tomorrow, the chances are you've probably already left it until tomorrow a few days ago. So if we're looking at this from a very, very firm standpoint of, well, what is it about me today? Why don't I want to do this task? What is it that's stopping me from doing it? And why would a future version of myself be better at this task? Okay, now this comes down to lots of different things that I won't spend too much time talking to you about, but just to give you an indication of what this can mean for you is from an energy standpoint, most of the time we leave things till tomorrow, in my experience, is because we feel tired. We say, no, we feel a little bit guilty about it, especially if you're a business owner. Okay. Now, what happens in this scenario is you say, I'm going to leave it till tomorrow. Okay. Now, the reason for that is usually because you're too tired. You tell yourself you're not going to deliver the best product, you're not going to deliver the best version. Okay. Just keep this in mind. All right. We're going to continue to talk about this. We're actually going to finish that point in the last point of this slide. Okay. So I want you to ask yourself why you think the better suited version of the future version of yourself would be better suited to do this task. Now, leaving it until tomorrow, why is it a mistake? Okay. This is a disguise for what is usually a mental battle. Okay. It's a theory in which we don't really want to do it. Okay. Now, in this scenario, we're telling ourselves, I'll be better at doing it tomorrow. I'll be better suited for it. I'll have had a better rest. I'll be more alert. I've got more time. I've got this, that, the other thing. Life happens. Tomorrow comes around. You're having a similar day to the day that you did today or yesterday in this context. Okay. And guess what? Again, no, I haven't got time, or no, I don't feel like it, or I've not got the energy levels, or I'm not going to deliver the best version of the product. Any of these things, or product, task, project, whatever it is that you're putting off. Okay. So essentially, this is a disguise for what is usually a mental battle. It's a battle with yourself saying, no, I will be better tomorrow. But the thing is, this is the guilt that you feel for not doing it today, because really, instead of going and doing whatever you're going to do for the rest of the day, you should have done what you originally committed yourself to doing. Now, this applies in so many different contexts. It can be business, it can be personal life, it can be health, it can be fitness, whatever. If we've committed to doing something and we just don't feel like doing it, we're very, very good at coming up with reasons as to why it's not going to be possible today, but we can maybe look at it sometime in the future. And then the future for that never really comes. Okay. So tomorrow turns into next week. Okay. Now we've got 2 points to discuss here. Tomorrow turns into next week turns into next year, and next year, if ever, turns into nothing. Okay. If you've got something, unless you write it down, you store it properly, you come back to it, tomorrow very, very likely turns into next week for 2 reasons. Number one, you either never come back to the task because you wrote it down, forgot about it, or you didn't write it down at all. Number 2, you just continually have the same days that you're having today. What's going to be different about yourself tomorrow? Are you going to get yourself in a better routine? Are you going to somehow structure your day differently so that you can get more done? There's multiple ways in which you could have a better day tomorrow, in whichever way you would define to be better. But that's up to you whether you're going to change that or not. Okay. So how can you avoid it? Completing 100% is daunting. Begin with completing 10. Okay. Now, this is a piece of advice that I give any one of my clients, anybody I've ever spoken to, about the theory of, well, I actually don't think I'm going to do it today. I'll do it tomorrow. Okay. Now, if the reason behind this, which most often the one I hear is, no, I don't have the energy to do it today. I'm not going to deliver the best version. So what I would suggest you do is Give yourself a head start, okay? Number one, because there's a theory that if you create something, it is a lot easier to come back and adjust an imperfect version than it is to perfect it first time. If you try and perfect anything the first time around, there's a good chance that you're going to procrastinate. You're going to take far too long to do it. You're going to end up stressing yourself out. Now, the flip side of this, why don't you create it? Okay, draft copy, rough copy, whatever it is that you're doing, concept version, come back, look at it tomorrow. Now, tomorrow, you haven't left yourself a fresh slate of work to start with. You've got a project that's 85% complete, okay, ballpark. You just need to put on the finishing touches. You'll see things that you didn't see yesterday. It's always a good idea to build something, come back, look at it, see what you think, make improvements, adjustments, tweaks, okay? Now, this is how you can avoid it. You can do that, or you can look at just completing 10%. Get something done. Even if you're not willing to do the whole thing today, let's say you wanted to write a book. You're not going to expect yourself to sit down and write a 300-page book in a day. It's very unlikely to happen. But what you could do is you could write 30 pages, all right? So think about putting this kind of thing together in your head, mentally map it out, and be sure that tomorrow, if it is going to be pushed onto tomorrow, is coming in a good and productive way. If not, try and get something done today. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this slide. Now, each of the slides today throughout the presentation are going to follow the same format. What is it? Why is it a mistake? How can you avoid it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a brief moment now. Please go ahead, jot down any notes, and indeed fire away with any questions. Thank you so much for that one. I will get that at the end. And I will be right back with you very shortly for topic number 2. All right, so hopefully you've had a chance to do that now. We can move on to topic number 2, closing the door on education. Okay, now I myself, I'm a business coach. Here at iOB, we're all about iOB business, we're all about education. Okay, so closing the door on education, it probably doesn't come as a surprise. I'm going to suggest that this is not a good thing that you do. Okay, so the helpful explanation always at the beginning of these slides, what is it? Okay, closing the door on education is deciding that you know as much as you need to know. All right, that in theory, what this means is that you have done whatever you've done. You've built the business as far as you built it. You've advanced in your career as far as you've advanced. You've studied the textbooks and the books that you have so far. And you've essentially decided, whether consciously or not, no, it's done. I'm fine. I've finished learning now. Okay. Now, I know that it's almost impossible to think that you've actually said this to yourself. But if given in a productive way, are you open to taking advice? Are you open to support, guidance, tutelage? Do you believe in mentorship? Do you believe in further studies, continuous studies? Do you believe that there's always something to be learned, no matter how much you think you know? Okay, so give yourself this challenge. The topic in this whole world that you're best at, okay, whatever it is that you do, your profession, your personal hobby, your passion, okay, is there something else that you could learn about that thing? I don't know what that thing is. Everybody has different passions, different professions. What is that thing that comes into your mind? Do you believe that there is more to be learned on that? Or do you believe that actually, no, I think I'm there. I think I know everything. Okay, you might know a lot. You might know an awful lot. You might be the second or third person in the world who knows everything about it. Okay, but I don't think anyone truly knows every single thing there is to know. Okay, so theory here, deciding that you know as much as you need to know. Second, deciding that any further education would be meaningless. Okay, this is not an approach we want to take. It's not an attitude that we want to have in our professional life or personal life. Why? Because it can only give you disservice. Closing the door off to education. Okay, it's up to you what you do with that education. I'm not saying that you have to absorb it and action the education. Just be willing to listen to it. Okay, give yourself relevant information. So often what most of us do, the way we, well, certainly in my understanding, what we do is we take a piece of information, we process it, we decide what bits we're going to keep, we decide what bits we're going to get rid of. So on this webinar today, you've probably taken down some points which you're paying more attention to than others. Okay, I don't know what those are. I think it's all good. Okay, but everybody has different opinions. I'm biased. Okay, now with this theory of education and taking down what you actually need to know, this is very much for you to do. Okay, now we don't want to let anything get in the way of that, especially not ourselves. It can only be a disservice to say, no, I don't want that. It's useless. It's meaningless. Okay, unless it is completely unrelated to anything you've ever thought about. Okay, in which case, fair enough. So why is it a mistake? There's always something to learn. Okay, this is probably the most important thing, that we're talking about digital agencies. Okay, it's an ever evolving business. It's something that's growing all the time. There's new developments, there's new platforms, there's new adjustments and capabilities all the time. So there's always something to learn. Okay, there's a new way of doing something. There's a way of doing something better. There's a way of doing something more efficiently, cheaper. Okay, there's a new platform to use. There's some kind of other development that you can have. It's just, I don't know specifically what that's going to be, but I do know that if history is anything to go on, we're going to see more stuff coming forwards. Okay, so there's always something to learn. That's why it's a mistake to close the door on education. Additionally, there's always something to improve upon. So when I asked you there, your profession, your hobbies, your passion, what is it you know the most about? Okay, out of your entire life, what is it you know the most about? Could you improve on that? Okay, I'm not saying that you have to. You might be happy where you are. In which case, fantastic. All I'm saying is, if somebody offered you some advice or suggestion, or you picked up something in a book, an article, a guide, you took yourself there, even, which is sometimes how we prefer to learn. We prefer to find the information ourselves. Okay, because it's our choice. Is there something that you can improve upon? Okay, my answer, my theory would be yes. New information is coming out all the time. There's always new things to learn. Okay, now it's funny because although history is written in the history of the world, we're learning more things about it all the time. Okay, there's new discoveries, new theories, new ideas, new concepts. Okay, the same going forward into the future. There's new technology, there's new software, there's new things that people are coming out with, there's new theories on human behavior, there's new everything. Okay, new information is coming out all the time. Okay, so we've got to make sure that this is something that we understand and something that we process and something that we're actually happy about. Okay, the fact that new information is coming out all the time is a wonderful, wonderful thing, because it means that you can never become stagnant. You don't have to ever stop learning. You don't have to ever stop developing or growing or figuring yourself out, figuring out things around you, because new information is coming out all the time. But don't let yourself close the door on that. Remind yourself that you can always improve and always learn more. This is how you avoid it. Okay. So if you're in a situation where you're beginning to believe, actually, no, I've already nailed this, whether you're doing 100,000 a year, 500,000 a year, or 5 million a year, okay, still more to do. There's more to learn. Okay. If you're doing 5,000 a year, you can learn how to get to 20. If you're doing 100,000 a year, you can learn how to get to 500,000. If you're doing 500,000, you can learn how to multiply that by 10 so that you get into the 5 million category. If you're doing that, you can take it further and further and further. Okay. This is just essentially the type of business. Now, you'll be learning different things at different stages. Sometimes it's about how to craft an offer and sell it. Other times it's about how to scale a huge, huge company. Okay. And how you manage that size. So there's different things to learn at different stages. The theory is not always the same, but the idea that you can always be learning more is accurate. So I'm going to leave that up on screen for you now. Please go ahead, jot down any notes, fire away any questions. I think I've got another one in there, so I'll get that to you at the end. And I will join you very, very shortly for topic number 3, the third and final topic of today's session. All right, wonderful. So moving us now on to the third and final topic of today, needless posturing. Okay, this is possibly a pet peeve of mine, something that I work very much with people to try and avoid, something that I'm very, very conscious of not doing myself. Okay, needless posturing. You probably possibly even noticed it on this webinar. Okay, there is no posturing. Everybody's a human. Everybody makes human error, human mistakes. All right, we don't need to be perfect. It's something I'm going to talk about to you today. So what is posturing? What is needless posturing? Okay, I'm going to give this to you in good detail just in case it's not making total sense yet. So needless posturing is essentially painting a picture that isn't necessarily accurate in order to shape someone's opinion of you. Okay, so posturing would be essentially putting on an act in front of somebody, pretending to be someone or something that you're not. Okay, now there's a very big difference between, say, being professional at a networking event and relaxing with your family. It's not posturing to put on a different persona if it's appropriate to the situation, because you can't be laughing and casual sometimes at a business networking event and vice versa. You don't want to be in business mode when you're trying to have dinner with your family. Okay, so there's certainly different appropriations for, appropriate ways to act, should we say? Okay, so painting a picture that isn't necessarily accurate in order to shape someone's opinion of you. Now, this is something that you've got to be so careful to avoid. Okay, it's something that if you end up doing, you could potentially cause yourself more fault and more harm. Okay, not necessarily any kind of serious harm, just potentially jeopardizing future relationships and so on, if you paint a picture of yourself that isn't necessarily accurate. Okay, so looking at this in the context of posturing. Okay, so posturing is an act, it's a way of behaving that isn't you, it's posturing. Okay, so we're posturing saying, you know, I want you to believe that I'm a multi millionaire and that I drive all these nice cars and that I have this kind of rapid success lifestyle. Even if I haven't said that in as many words, I want you to believe that that's what's happening. I tell you, when you ask me how I'm doing, I say, yeah, I'm doing brilliant, I'm flying high, I'm doing all these kinds of amazing things. Okay, now, whilst potentially inspirational if true, it could even be off-putting. Okay, if you're at a business networking event of other small businesses, they want to see vulnerability. Okay, they want to see somebody who has suffering, who has sacrifice. Okay, and not, again, not in a serious way, just in the way that makes you look human. Okay, it's something that's so important. So painting a picture that isn't necessarily accurate in order to shape someone's opinion of you, that's what it is. Why is it a mistake? Posturing can be off-putting to many, especially if found to be inaccurate. Okay, so this posturing, this pretending to be someone, a version of yourself that you're not, in order to try and shape someone's opinion of you, because you want them to believe that you're something that potentially you're not. Now, posturing, for somebody that can read body language well, and even if past this, just simply put the fact that they possibly don't like the way that you're behaving, can be off-putting. It can harm your relationship making ability. It can harm your ability to form these bridges with new people who could potentially become valuable contacts for you in the future. Okay, it can be off-putting because they don't see any vulnerability. They don't see any sacrifice. They don't see any bad days from you. So they just believe that you're this superhuman machine that's basically dominating in your world all the time. Okay, now it makes that very hard to relate to because it's not the typical situation of a business. It's very, very unlikely that any business is going to have a good day every single day. It just doesn't work like that. Okay, certainly not in my experience and not in the experience of many others. So it can be off-putting, especially, okay, now what I mean by this, if it's found to be inaccurate, that is possibly the worst thing that could happen in this situation. Not only was it completely unnecessary in the first place and possibly counterproductive, you're now found to be somebody who wasn't being completely honest about who they were. Business is largely about building meaningful professional relationships, and this is difficult if you're not authentic. Okay, authenticity brings you so much. It helps people relate to you. You can build rapport, you can build credibility, you can have banter, you can laugh, you can share stories, you can share thoughts and what you believe business to be and how it should be. Okay, business isn't just some kind of corporate formula. Business is about people. You connect with another person, you both have a business behind you, you can bring those two businesses together to do something great. But if you're not doing that, if you're posturing or you're making yourself out to be somebody that you're not, that person is very likely not going to want to do business with you because either they found out that you're not the person they thought you were because of your actions, or they just don't like the over the top, cockiness, shall we say. Okay, so it's very important to be humble, be genuine, be authentic, be honest. Okay, it's not going to harm you. Okay, and if it does, that person is not somebody you want to do business with anyway. If somebody feels like you need to put on some kind of persona about, be somebody you're not, it's not necessarily somebody you want to do business with anyway. Okay, so how can you avoid this? You can be real. You can understand that you don't need to prove anything to someone. Simply be the best version of yourself in your business. Be proud of who you are. Be proud of what you've built. Be honest about where you are. Okay, if you're just about to do your first 10,000 in turnover, don't start telling people that you're on track for 100,000 or 1,000,000 this year. Okay, more likely to catch you out and make you look negative than any other potential possible benefit. I really don't see how any benefit could come out of saying something like that. So just be real, and other real people will enjoy doing real business with you. Okay, it's not quite as simple as that, but that's a very, very big step in getting there if you wish to grow your business in a humble, solid, meaningful way. Okay, so once again, we're at the end of topic number 3. I'm going to give you a moment now. Okay, go ahead, jot down any notes, fire away with any questions, any final questions before we dive into the Q&A. I'm going to take you to the end of the webinar, then we're going to do a 5-minute Q&A session, and we can run through what your questions were from today. I'll be right back with you. Okay, fantastic. So we are back. We're back in action, and we will dive on to the Q&A section now. Okay, before we do that, let's do a quick recap of today's session. Tomorrow turns into next week. Okay, turns into next month, turns into next year. Be careful that you don't do that. Number two, there's always more to learn. Okay, don't ever close the door in education because you don't need to. There's no benefit to that. And finally, be authentic, be real. Don't give other people a false idea of who you are or who you might be. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the questions that I got from you on today's webinar whilst we are going through this little section here. So as always, an enormous thank you for attending. Okay. If you would like to have a chat with us, to talk to a member of our team, you're more than welcome to head over to iob-business.com/talk-to-us. Then you can go on here, you can book a call at a time that suits you. You can see an example version of the calendar down here. It'll look just like that. You can go ahead and book a call with us. Okay, so first question I got in today. Isn't it important for prospects to believe that I'm impressive? Your business is impressive. Yeah, sure. Okay, totally. Yeah. So this is different to misleading someone, okay, which would often end in disappointment. Somebody thinking that you're impressive is you running on all cylinders, you showing them that you can do whatever you said you were going to do for them. You can do it very, very well. Okay. Essentially taking the theory that you can be impressive without posturing. Okay. If you truly do say and do what you do, I know that sounds confusing. So if you can truly deliver, in short, on what you say you can, and that is impressive to somebody else, very well done. And I absolutely agree. So posturing, it's different to being authentic. Just because you're being authentic doesn't mean that you cannot be impressive at the same time. Great question, though. Thank you. Question number two, when do I know enough? All right. Okay. So we're going in the education section here. How long is a piece of string? Okay. When do you know enough? Your education, therefore your success, is relative to you personally. So are you achieving what you desire or what you desired to achieve? Your education, maybe you don't need anymore. Would you like anymore? It's a relative question. Okay. So if you wanted to be educated in how to build a business that does £100,000 turnover per year, if you're doing that, then one could say, okay, well, you know what you set out to know. You achieve what you set out to achieve. But it's human nature to always want a little bit more. So do you now have £100,000 a year business that you want to take to 200? Okay. Or do you want to go and start a different business? Okay. Now, there's various different ways in which you can do this. Okay. Digital agencies that I work with on a regular basis, they hit these numbers. Okay. And they say, well, actually, no. Okay. Let's do something else. So let's spend less time in the office. Let's hit a higher turnover figure. Let's do more, be more. Okay. It's a wonderful way to think. So again, another fantastic question. Yeah. But it's really up to you. And that applies to everybody that's on this webinar today. You know, this is a great question because it allows me to give you what I hope to be a great answer, in the fact that your education is relative. Whatever you want to achieve, go and get education for that, because it exists. It's out there. Most of the time, if you want to do something, you can go ahead and learn how to do it. Okay, but another great question. Thank you ever so much. I'm going to just do a check and see if I've got any more questions from you today. Excellent. Okay, looks like we're all set. So a massive thank you to all of you who took the time to join us today. A pleasure to see some new faces in here, and a pleasure to see so many familiar ones. So as always, I wish you a very, very happy Wednesday. Have an amazing rest of the week, and I very much look forward to seeing you again in the near future. Take care and bye for now.